everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, astrology for authentic living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And in this episode, we will be discussing the astrology for the week of November 20th, and what we have titled Rising from the Ashes. The purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about this week are Venus in Scorpio, sextile Pluto, which we're calling meaningful connections. We'll also talk about the Sun moving into Sagittarius and Mercury in Sagittarius trine Uranus, which is about freedom and innovative thinking. And then lastly, we'll talk about Neptune stationing direct and the first quarter square of the moon in Pisces, which is all about making magic. So as always, remember that some of these aspects will influence you more than others based on what's literally happening in your life right now and your personal astrological makeup. So notice what resonates with you most and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, because you know you best. So yeah, Shawna, let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some other minor aspects for all you astro geeks out there. Well, our lunar lady starts out the week in big picture Sagittarius before moving into the get shit done sign of Capricorn late on Monday and early Tuesday. So she's going to remain in the sign of the Seagoat until she moves into futuristic Aquarius on Thursday, and where she will remain through much of the weekend. Then on Sunday, she's going to make her way into dreamy Pisces, and where we'll have our first quarter moon, which we will discuss in much more detail later in the episode. So Shawna, please share this week's fabulous featured author with our listeners.
Yeah, so this episode features quotes and inspiration from J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series of fantasy novels. And so we chose her work this week because her work is very magical, innovative, and it was created from a major point of personal adversity. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she had a lot of adversity, and when she actually created the series, she was, I think she was on welfare and food stamps and just like a classic pulling yourself up from your bootstraps kind of story with her. So it's a great symbol for this week because we may feel as though we are doing just that, as though we're rising from the ashes of last week's very intense energies.
Yes, how perfect for that. I'm so excited we're featuring her. I love her so much and all her creations.
Yeah, she's amazing. So we're excited to jump into these transits with everyone. But one last note before we do, we want to give a shout out to all of our patrons. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
So yeah,
we would really appreciate the support.
Definitely. And it's always great to hear from everyone, regardless of patronage or not. It's great to hear from our listeners. We always love hearing from you all on social media. So if you are a patron, of course, you get the show notes every week with all of the details of each episode, including the specific dates of the aspects, the tarot cards that Mel pulls, the quotes, the reflection questions, and then the weekly action item. So you get all of that by becoming a patron of the podcast. So you can find out more about that on our Facebook and Instagram under Feminine Principle Podcast, or you can go to feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com.
Yes, and we would love to have you. We are just so grateful for our patrons and the people that are showing up every day to have a listen or a download to the episodes, and we're just kind of amazed at how how word spreads and how cool that is. So, Shawna, do you want to share what else we have coming down the pipeline? Number 3?
Yeah, so many resources for you guys. So another way that we are excited to build this community is by hosting Facebook Live events. So we're hosting a full moon Facebook Live event to chat with you all live about the astrology of that day on Friday, December 1st. And so it'll be at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8:30 p.m. Universal Time. And it's actually Saturday, December 2nd at 6:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Time. So mark your calendar, and we look forward to connecting with you then.
Yes. And I guess thank goodness for daylight savings time, because that has adjusted us by 1 hour for our Aussie folks. We're a little bit later. So
yeah,
we're at least at the break of day now.
Yes, exactly. After the sun rises up.
Yes. Oh, that's great. All right. Yeah, I'm so excited to come back and do another Facebook Live, because last time and the time before was so much fun. And I love the people that show up and the questions that are asked. And of course, we're going to have some new topics of discussion. And if there's anything, in the meantime, as we're leading up to this this Facebook Live event, if you have any questions or, thoughts on what we might want to address, give us a shout out. We'd love to hear what you think. And we'll help to prepare that in with what we're doing.
Definitely.
So yeah, Shawna, let's get started here with our aspects of the week. We got another juicy week of sorts in the astro world. And so we're going to start with our first aspect, which is Venus, who will be sextile to Pluto. And that's going to happen exactly on Tuesday, November 21st at 3:26 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11:26 a.m. Universal Time and 9:26 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that sextile will happen at 17 degrees Scorpio and Capricorn. So Shawna, please kick us in with your first quote.
Mm-hmm. So she says, "You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity." And so I read this and I was like, oh, that's so perfect for Venus making a connection with Pluto, but especially Venus and Scorpio sextiling with Pluto and Capricorn, because Scorpio and Capricorn, those signs have this element of being strengthened by adversity and being strengthened, being deepened. And Venus, of course, is about relationships. Pluto is about power. So I thought that was a really beautiful explanation, little succinct explanation of this aspect.
Yes, it really sums it up quite nicely. And it's so true. It's so true, because it's so interesting how adversity a lot of times is what truly bonds humans, whether it's in a relationship, a friendship, even a stranger. How many people, when they're in certain even crisis situations where you have to rely on people you don't even know, and everybody just bands together and you form this bond of, just a bond through adversity, in a sense. Like even soldiers have that, with their other people in their, what's the word? Infantry. I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So it is so true that very much so relationships are strengthened by these tests in a sort. But so let's talk about a sextile real quick, because Shawna, what I've noticed is a couple questions coming in from people who are listening that may not be as knowledgeable in certain specifics of astrology, like say the aspects. Maybe we should give them a little primer on what is a sextile, just right quick. So do you have any thing you want to say on the sextile to sum it up so nicely, like maybe like her quote?
Yeah. So I think a sextile, it's something, it shows a connection between the planets. So there is something that's happening. It's not as challenging as, let's say, a square or an opposition. So I feel like there is something that will come up around relationships and how it is that we connect at a very deep level. This may also involve the power between the relationships, Pluto's power. But I see it as more something where there is kind of a bit of a challenge there, but it's not overwhelming. And it's not something that hits us over the head, so to speak, in the way that sometimes a square would between these two planets. And so I think that a sextile is something that it's a challenge, but it's something where it's a challenge that we can handle. And we're like, okay, I got this. I know what this is. I can do this.
Exactly. And the reason why we can handle it is because what makes it a sextile is it's about 60 degrees apart, which means it's two signs away from each other. And usually two signs away are we'll give you two like energies that are in similar modalities. Like for this one is a water and an earth. So we basically have Venus, who is in a water sign in Scorpio, and then we have Pluto, who's an earth sign in Capricorn. And water and earth tend to help each other, or are a little more complementary. And so that's kind of what makes this sextile workable, right, Shawna? Because that's essentially what it is. It's workable. It's manageable. It's like, I don't know if anybody's seen the new Sarah Silverman show out there that's on Hulu.
Oh no.
It's called I Love America, but her last episode, her whole thing, and, she gets a little raunchy on there. That's just her character.
Yeah.
Capricorn moon, she's definitely a Capricorn personality. But her thing last episode was, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And I find like this could be part of this sextile in a way, or just sextiles in general. If you're able to bring it up, we're able to deal with it. We're able to work with the energy. So yeah, I think that this could be a very beneficial time especially for relationships, and any type of relating and any type of power dynamics, or maybe if there's any residual kind of Scorpio muck that might be holding on to a relationship that needs to be healed in some way, or like softened from any type of previous resentment or guilt over an issue. Now we have like that aspect that's coming in. It's like, yeah, let me strengthen our relating ability. Let me heal areas that just aren't helping us anymore, and put some things to rest, in a sense, because the moon, it's interesting, Shawna, because the moon, when we have this sextile, will be in the early degrees of Capricorn, like really early. And essentially, as this aspect is brewing, the moon will have just come off a conjunction to Saturn, at the tail end of Sagittarius. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Like the fact that, the moon is going to be in maybe a more practical consideration, and it's also going to be extra practical because it will have just moved over some Saturn action. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that is really interesting. And I feel like there's maybe a few different things that we may be feeling, because I'm reminded that in the previous week we had Mars making an aspect to Pluto. And so it may be that Venus is coming in this week to kind of like smooth out any challenging situations that came up in the previous week. And we can do that by using the moon. We can do that by using that practical Capricorn Saturn kind of energy, and kind of bringing things down to, okay, what is it that I need at this point in time? Very practically, it doesn't have to be super emotional. It's like, okay, this is, asking for what it is that you need and what it is that you desire in a very simplistic and more rational kind of way. I feel like we're going to be feeling more rational than anything with the moon there, especially.
That's so true. We're like literally bringing it down to earth. I mean, if we're going to simplify it as easily as possible, which I think is going to be great, because especially when you deal with Plutonian issues, and yes, we did just come off that Mars square to Pluto last week, and it's still an orb, so it's wrapping up those issues. So I really love the speculation that you made, Shawna, about perhaps Venus coming in and kind of softening the situation after we've dealt with certain maybe assertion issues having to do with power or relationships, or even making choices in our lives, because that previous square might have had us once again at a crossroads in certain areas, and we are getting out of that. And so I'm hoping that Venus will come in and provide maybe a little bit of stability. But the thing is that, essentially in traditional astrology, Venus is in her fall when she's in Scorpio. And, what I've heard, she's in her detriment in Scorpio, not the fall. That's for Virgo. So what I'm I've heard kind of recently, I want to say it was like Benjamin Dykes that said this, is that when planets are in an air in that kind of fall or detriment, there's like kind of a change element there, or there's just like an instability within it. So I'm wondering if we're really just going to be kind of going with the flow of certain things with this workable aspect, to where we're just kind of like, oh, well, I'm gonna, because Scorpio is about change, like essentially. But it seems like we are opening up to new opportunities within these new parameters of change in our life. And so, yeah, we can work with it. It might have some challenging things because we're still talking about Pluto. Pluto is never like fully easy to deal with. But this seems really, really supportive to me, especially for us to go deeper and get really honest about our current situation, especially relationships, money, what we're opening up to in life, and how that's looking, and if we are going with the flow of change, essentially.
Yeah. And I think anytime that a planet is either in its detriment or in its fall, Venus in this case, it tells us that maybe things don't go in the way that we would expect them to typically. So Venus is about relationships, and typically we want relationships to be like happy and loving and reciprocal and all of these things. And so Venus being in Scorpio is like, well, you might have to work a little bit harder to get what it is that you want. And, or it might not look exactly, it might not be the sunshine and rainbows that we typically imagine. But I think Venus and Scorpio, it can there can be very deep, and there can be very deep emotional connections, I think, in relationship. And so I think it depends on how much effort we put into it as well, and how comfortable, like what's our expectation, are we comfortable with things maybe looking a little bit different than the status quo?
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation, because it's kind of like what we were talking about last week. It seemed to be a theme of last week a lot, is about not quite knowing what is truly beneficial, like maybe expectations that we have in life don't really foster the end goal the way we see it. And so the universe will bring us other situations that, are just better for your good, So I think that might have something to do with it too. But either way, I think in the end that whatever's happening when this is happening will be hopefully beneficial in the long run. So that being said, let's talk about some of these tarot cards, because I think it adds another little added layer here to what we're talking about. And I drew the Hierophant as the focus and the Four of Wands as the grounding. And, there's a couple ways to look at this. But the first off, I thought, especially since we have a lot of kind of big picture ideas maybe coming in this week, which we're going to talk about a little later on in the episode. I feel like there might be a need to maybe find some inspiration or like some, foundational stability outside ourselves by like finding support in a mentor or someone who just knows more than we do on a matter, to find, support in reaching out to someone who might be able to help there, or, or be able to push us into some sort of achievement, or like kind of grounded place to where we can get past kind of the first hump of what we're building. Shawna, what do you think about these two cards? This unlikely combination together.
Yeah, it is a weird combination. And what strikes me about them is so the Hierophant is about structure. It's associated with following a certain methodology, like a certain belief system, or like you're saying, Mel, like a mentor that says, okay, this is the path, these are the steps, this is the structure to follow. And then the Four of Wands is about, like, I associate that with marriage, with a sense of community, kind of like an emotional or familial kind of structure. And so these two together, like, I'm like, oh, what what do we need to do to follow that structure? What do we need to do to follow the most appropriate pathway that kind of like we got to play the game, so to speak, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, we may want certain things really bad, and it may be important for us to, like I'm saying, don't compromise values, but at the same time, like, we have to work the system. Like, how can we work the system to get what it is that we want without compromising ourselves at the same time?
Exactly. And that is exactly was my other point with this. It's true. We might need to play by the rules in order to get to a certain level of completion on what we're working on. Because that's the thing with the 4 is it's grounded. It's a 4. It's got all sides on it. It has some stability to it. And usually that stability comes through the support of others a lot of times, where like that network or that family, or our loved ones or our business, especially our business partners, if we're talking about wands. And so, yeah, we just might have to play by the rules this week, just to get to a point, where we're more stable and we have a cause for celebration, because ultimately the 4 of Wands, has this air of like, celebration. It's excited. It's reached a pinnacle of some sorts. It's not the utmost. That's the thing. It's like a 4. It's okay to stay here, but you don't want to live here, type of thing. So it is kind of like just reaching some sort of celebratory plateau, and chances are we're going to get there either by having to play within certain rules, especially authority systems, or maybe finding help outside of ourselves and someone that is more knowledgeable and can help lead the way to that support. So yeah, maybe it does work after all, Shawna.
Yeah, very interesting combo.
Yes. So all right, so some questions to take away for Venus in Scorpio, who's sextile to Pluto and Capricorn. I would ask myself, when given the opportunity to relate with honesty, integrity, because Pluto likes that, can I open myself up to the healing potential of meaningful connections? I would ask, is there an authority outside myself that I may align with to gain more wisdom into my situation? Can the support of another help in my self-mastery? And then lastly, I would ask, as I embrace the changes in my life and relationships, where can I find cause for celebration? How can I honor what has been and look positively to what will be?
Nice.
All right, Shawna. So let's get into our next pair of aspects here. We have, let's all congratulate the sun as it moves into the land of Sagittarius. Yay! And so we're going to talk about the sun, who has now moved into, or is moving into Sagittarius. And also Mercury, who is currently in Sag, who will be in a trine aspect to Uranus and Aries. And what we are titling Freedom and Innovative Thinking. And so some exacts on that. The sun will move into expansive Sagittarius on Tuesday, November 21st at 7:05 p.m. Pacific time, which is Wednesday, the 22nd at 3:05 a.m. Universal time. And then 1:05 p.m. Aussie Eastern time. And of course, it's going to happen at 0 degrees Sagittarius because that's how it enters the sign. And then also we have Mercury trine Uranus, and that will be exact on Saturday, November 25th at 2:55 a.m. Pacific time, which is 10:55 a.m. Universal time and 8:55 p.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that trine will happen at 25 degrees Sagittarius and Aries. So Shawna, kick us in with your next quote.
So I like this one. She says, "I've no idea where my ideas come from, and I hope I never find out. It would spoil the excitement for me if it turned out that I just have a funny little wrinkle on the surface of my brain, which makes me think about invisible train platforms." And so I thought this was really quite perfect for this pair of aspects because we have the sun moving into Sagittarius, which is all about big thinking and innovative ideas. And with Sagittarius, there's an excitement around concepts, and there's an excitement around just possibility in general. Sagittarius always makes me think of enjoying novelty too. So it's like the novelty of like just thinking about something like an invisible train platform. And then the other piece of this too, because Mercury is our mind, it's our thought process, and it's connecting with Uranus, which is about innovation, and it's about these lightning bolt flashes of insight. And so to me, this is like one of the classic creative processes where she's like, I don't know, I just get these ideas and it just comes in. And so I thought that was a really perfect quote for this pair of aspects.
I love it. It's so true. And who knows, maybe there is a wrinkle there that is that is causing that. There's a lot of wrinkles up there from what I hear. So I love that. It's true. She doesn't, if anything, what she's saying is she doesn't want to take the magic out of it, you know, like I don't, you know, let's not look at this. And that's the thing with Sagittarius. Sagittarius isn't always known as the most realistic sign. You know, it's up in the air. It's like looking at these big picture things. It's looking at abstract concepts and things that you can't necessarily prove as real, but we can speculate upon them in their greatness. And so that really kind of plays into what she's saying there, you know. It's like drawing from this huge well of creativity and intuition, you know, that lies in a much bigger picture above us. And so Sagittarius kind of intuits that, you know, that fire intuition down in. So let's break these up a little bit and just talk about the sun, who's now moving into Sagittarius, and will be there, obviously, you know, for its roughly 30 days, 30-day transit. And it's interesting because as we have the sun in Sagittarius, the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter, who we have Jupiter in Scorpio, which has been giving us a lot of different contacts that have been very integral to the astrology of the last couple of weeks. So Shawna, what do you think? What do you see in store for this next basically month cycle, and maybe how Jupiter and Scorpio might come into play with these you know, big picture expansion considerations?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So so first off, I am a little bit excited about the sun in Sagittarius because the sun has previously been in the sign of Scorpio for about the past month. And so Scorpio's intense. It requires that we are brutally honest with ourselves, and that we tear away things that are kind of like a crutch in a certain way. And so we may feel the last month that we've been emotionally stripped down a little bit. And so I'm excited about the sun being in the sign of Sagittarius because it brings in some hope and some optimism and some lightness. It's like, hey, you've been stripped down, but it's cool. You got this. Like, you're going to be good. And there's some amazing things that can happen. And so I think that we're going to be feeling a lot lighter. Another interesting thing also is, so while the sun's in Sagittarius, it's going to square Neptune at some point. We'll talk about that in future episodes, but, the sun square Neptune, you know, that's where we may be questioning, our identity and what it is that we're doing with our energy. And so I think that it's just a different kind of feeling, a different kind of vibe than when the sun was moving through the sign of Scorpio. And
definitely a different vibe, that's for sure. I'm sure there are a lot of people, especially our fire and air people, who will be like, hallelujah, get me the hell out of Scorpio. Because it can be intense, and we intensity, that level of intensity is not for everyone. In fact, it's for very few people, but we actually have to deal with it and go through it. And, you know, maybe that's what makes Sagittarius so much lighter and optimistic and positive, is the fact that we come out of this dark time into this new light. You know, like it's almost like just the switch of energies. It's almost like, how do I say this? So you ever see something that is not so great, and then you see something that maybe is not that much better, but it's better, so it looks like 20 times better, you know?
That contrast is powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The contrast with it all. So, you know, I'm looking forward to some Sagittarius action here, and expanding our horizons, because essentially that's what happens when the sun comes in, is we get it points a spotlight on areas where we need to basically expand our own awareness, and maybe gain more experience in some level of life, or what we're going for. This is where we can take in new ideas and new information, and execute it, and try to experience and really understand the new things that are in our lives, or what we're trying to put together, in a sense. And I think that it's going to be very helpful with the fact that Mercury will be trining Uranus pretty much ahead of the game. We have it at 25 degrees Sagittarius, Mercury. So it'll be at the tail end. It's about to go retrograde too, which we'll talk about is it next week or the following? I think it's next week, though.
It's next week. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So everyone be aware, you know, we are in that shadow period. So
get ready.
And that's the thing, is like when we're in the shadow period, of course, we're going to talk about Mercury retrograde next week, but when we're in the shadow period for, you know, the week or so that leads up to it, I find that the information that comes in now is really the most potent information out of the last, you know, 3+ months for us to really chew over once we get to Mercury retrograde. So especially with the trine to Uranus, which Uranus is all about, you know, awakening new things within us, leading us in ways we can be more progressive in our lives and try new things and think outside the box. And so hopefully, maybe the new things and these inspirations and insights that are going to be coming to us will really help facilitate those, you know, handful of weeks that we spent in retrograde, as we maybe chew over those ideas and new things that are coming to light. So Shawna, what do you think about that, you know, as we're so close to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Mel, because Mercury, it will go back over this spot, this contact with Uranus, and it goes retrograde. So this is the thing with Mercury and Uranus is ideas, Mercury, they come in hot and fast, Uranus. And so it's always important to like write things down or to record things. It doesn't mean that we're always going to do something with the insights that we have, but it's important to collect them so that they don't just, you know, fly off. Like when you have a dream, I don't know about you, but I have to write it down right away. Otherwise I forget it, even if it's like 5 minutes later or something like that. And so we may be we may be elaborating on whatever insights that we're having this week. There may be more information that is to come or to be chewed over in the next few weeks when we're going through the Mercury retrograde period in the future as well.
Yeah. And especially, you know, because Uranus is known for the, you know, the unexpected, you know. This is a time where you can get a message out of the blue, a call, a letter, an event that it pops up. And, you know, you might be, you know, sparked to meet new people and essentially try new things and expand in some way or shape or form, because once again, you know, our mind is operating in in Sagittarius, and so we're looking for all those opportunities. Oh, I hope so, at least to see opportunities of where we can get out of our comfort zone and maybe try new things and spark some new, you know, life into our mental states and how we approach just life in general, you know, because the mind a lot of times can be everything, especially if you're a Gemini rising or a Virgo rising, or your sun's there or whatever, you know, Mercury is very important for you. So I would totally pay attention to transits such as these, and especially as we lead up to Mercury retrograde.
Definitely.
So, I found interesting also, Shawna, and I know it's not quite there yet, and it's probably something we're going to talk about next week as well. But Mercury is awful close to a conjunction with Saturn as well, as it trines Uranus, which is interesting because we just had the Saturn and Uranus trine. Was it last week or the week before?
I think it was the week before.
Yeah, my mind is slipping there. So it's interesting how our minds are basically thinking outside of the box or looking for these new opportunities or unexpected ways of going about things. But at the same time, by honoring these things that are coming into our lives and these new inspirations, I feel that whatever that is actually going to give us the solidity that we need to maybe put some first steps into a major undertaking, because we're talking about Sagittarius. It's a big picture. And especially on Saturn, we're looking at these grander things that we want to come down the pipeline for us. So I'm wondering if maybe this Uranus action and us, trying some different things, and even so much as, embracing new technology, because, Uranus loves technology, can help us really put a good foot forward into these bigger picture plans. So what do you think about that, Shawna? And especially maybe because Saturn is so close there.
Yeah, it is really close. I feel like it's this encouragement to take our ideas seriously. So whatever we're imagining, because Mercury will trine Uranus, and then super shortly after that, it's Saturn. So it's like Uranus, idea, vision, and then Saturn. Okay, what am I going to do with that over the long term?
I love that. And it's so great too, because here we have Mercury, who is, being in Sagittarius. Sagittarius's ruler is Jupiter, who is in Scorpio and trine Neptune. So once again, we have this kind of otherworldly, bigger picture, dream related, like these big things, these I feel like these are kind of like cogs in the wheel of like big stepping stone moments, especially towards a lot of things we've been, some dreams we've been putting energy into, or dreams we want to put energy into. And so I feel like there's somewhat of a connection there.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about, especially since just threw in a little Neptune action, let's talk about these cards, because they add another interesting layer on this aspect, or the pair of them, because we are talking about the sun, who is now in Sagittarius as well. And I drew the Sun of Cups as the focus and the Four of Swords as the grounding. And if I want to take this into a high ideal, which the Sun of Cups probably likes to do, chances are this is we're coming to a mental clarity around how to make our dreams into a reality. We're letting the heart guide us enough to get clear around our ideas and on how we want to use our power. And so essentially I feel like we're maybe in a slight state of rest, especially with some Neptune transits. We're going to talk about Neptune stationing direct, and also that first quarter moon in Pisces. So I feel like there could be a little bit of a downtime to this time, to where we're getting clearer on, what it is our mind is thinking and intuiting and bringing in, and following the heart's impulse to basically just get as clear as we can. And in turn, that mental peace will help us take the action we need to. Because the action that we want to take is probably an idealistic action, which not everyone can easily, put the energy behind that and feel comfortable doing so. So Shawna, what do you think about these, or that, and these two cards put together?
Yeah, so these are interesting because I feel like we do have this really big idea, and there is this, like you're saying, Mel, a certain amount of idealism or maybe romanticism around what it is that we want to do. And the Four of Swords is like, okay, listen, you need to do some contemplation around it as well. So it's like maybe we balance the action with the contemplation, and we do a little bit of moving forward, from the heart, but then, not pushing it too far, getting that contemplation and, letting our ideas unfurl in a way, like in a place where they can be safe and they can be, nourished and cultured as well.
I like that. Because it's true. The Four of Swords, when it shows up, it's usually it's the best. It's what, like, the best card in the sword suit. It's the one that brings us the mental peace. And through that is rest and relaxation and allowing ourselves that downtime. So the only thing I would say, or just in addition to that, especially with the Son of Cups involved, because the Son of Cups, it moves forward on idealistic, visions, and which is lovely and can work. But sometimes, because it has that watery nature and like water, it just flows. It doesn't really have boundary around it, particularly. Mm-hmm. And so when you're acting from a place that is potentially missing some boundaries, if you find yourself in that area, this could be a great time to take a break from that and really assess, where you're putting up certain walls in your life to help, contain certain things. Because if our boundaries, as I learn more and more in my own life, if our boundaries are not put in place, we basically can kind of get walked all over. If you have dreams you want to accomplish, and you're not putting the right boundaries in place for yourself and in relation to other people, then it's really hard to achieve those things, because you can't really prioritize the necessities, because you're just kind of always going with the flow and not like knowing when to cut off and not knowing when to start. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think the theme of boundaries is something that we could even apply to the other aspects this week as well. And I think it is important when we're trying to create something in our lives, because we do have to have that certain sense of structure and be able to say no to others, but also no to ourselves, or, not right now, and to prioritize. We need to be able to create that structure.
Yeah, because that's where the idealism goes bad, when you're like, well, I'll just, it's okay if I do these things and blah, blah. Well, like, no, maybe not. Might want to put a little, put once again a 4. I find it interesting. We're grounded by 2 4s in a row.
I was thinking that too.
Yes. So there is some type of foundational thing that is happening this week. But lastly, I would say about these cards is that it could actually be a great time for something such as like art therapy, or like healing sessions of some sort, so that you can achieve a mental breakthrough, like cut through some of that Neptunian fog, of this week and last week. And because that Four of Swords really wants to get clear. So maybe by kind of like getting in and doing some art, or maybe creating some music, or just tapping into therapy of any sort, talking about the emotions and getting them all out there, we might have a mental breakthrough just by that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
All right. So some questions to take away as the sun is moving into Sagittarius, and then we have the Mercury trine to Uranus. I would ask myself, with the sun now in Sagittarius, where is the spotlight shining on greater expansion? Can I pay attention to the areas of my life that need more freedom? I would ask, with my personal dreams and big picture on the forefront of my mind, can I think outside the box to get greater clarity on these visions? Which key insights are calling to my attention? And then lastly, I would ask, how willing am I to try new things or meet new people? If something or someone pops up from out of the blue, will I be able to find opportunity in the unexpected?
Nice.
So let's look out for those unexpected opportunities, because I have a feeling there might be some coming down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Shawna, so let's talk about our last pair of aspects we have this week, and that is Neptune, who's going to be stationing and going direct. And then we also have our first quarter square of the moon in Pisces, and what we are titling Making Magic. And so some exacts on that, we have Neptune, who is going to station in movement and then move direct on Wednesday, November 22nd at 6:21 a.m. Pacific time, which is 2:21 p.m. Universal time. And then Thursday, the 23rd at 12:21 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that's going to happen at 11 degrees Pisces. And then we have our first quarter moon on Sunday at November 26th at 9:03 a.m. Pacific time, which is 5:03 p.m. Universal time. And then Monday, the 27th at 3:03 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that is going to happen at 4 degrees Pisces. So Shawna, kick us in with your last quote.
So she says, imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the foundation of all invention and innovation. It is arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity. It is the power to that enables us to empathize with humans whose experience we have never shared. Whew, the way that's worded is very interesting in itself. But I love it so much because she speaks about this imagination and envisioning something which is not in existence, which is already very Neptune, very Pisces. But then that capacity to imagine, it's transformative, and it also allows us to empathize with people, especially an experience that we may have never had personally, but that we can connect with someone because we just feel what they're feeling. And so this is very Neptune, this is very Pisces. And so I love this quote for this particular combination.
Yes, and it's quite a combo, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. That's what you call, universal timing. I'm telling you, you just can't make this stuff up. And I bet you're going to find this interesting if you did not know. But I did run across the fact as I was doing some looking into of Neptune stationing direct. Because if we have a planet that's in our chart, like beyond the transit. So say in your natal chart, you have, especially one of these outer planets, or any planet really, that is in its station when it stops and it's basically just in its place. It's not moving forward or backwards or whatever. I mean, they never move backwards. It's all apparent motion. But when it's in that really prime state of moving direction, it is really powerful, and especially in the birth chart. And so I found it so appropriate, Shawna, that guess who has Neptune stationed in their birth chart?
Oh, J.K. Rowling?
Yep.
What?
How funny is that?
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know that one. That's so bananas. Holy cow.
I had a feeling you did it, and I wasn't going to tell you in our pre-talk because I wanted it to be a surprise. But
you know what's funny is I looked at her chart too beforehand. Usually when we feature someone, I'll look at their chart, but I didn't notice that. That's so funny.
Well, and that's a great point that you bring that up, Shawna, because when you have stations in your chart, a lot of times with astrological software, it doesn't apparently show them. It'll look like it's direct, but really it's like if you look at the planetary speed, you'll be able to see that is super slow. Or there are programs out there that will tell you when something's stationed, but a lot of them don't, including the ones I use. So you got to really get in there to decipher if something's stationed. But if it is, it really adds that extra juice, and especially we're talking about Neptune, so we're adding like extra sensitivity and potency around, the arts, the imagination, spirituality or humanitarianism, which like you were just saying, Shawna, feeling that empathy for someone else or being able to just really connect even though you're not feeling what they are. And so having that stationed in your chart, or like say J.K. Rowling, that's going to bring that up. And it could bring up things like escapism and self-delusion and even like the Messiah complex. Like I think it was Jim Jones who had a Neptune station in his chart.
Yeah.
So that stuff does exist, but I think it is so appropriate that she has Neptune stationed, because I can I mean, there's a lot of creative people in this world, but I have to say, as far as, our 21st century, she's probably up there in, great creators.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so let's talk about what it means when it stations direct, just us average people that don't have that stationed in our chart. Well, what do you think about that, Shawna? What do you think about that, that stopping of motion and that kind of stillness that the planet takes on?
Yeah, so it makes me think of that point when a wave has washed up to shore and it's like just reached like the apex as far as it's going to go before it starts to move. And so it's like there is this little tiny pause of movement, and it feels like there's a powerful force that just kind of stops. And so it's this is all around, like you're talking about, Mel, imagination and creativity and our spiritual connection. And so, I don't know, I think that we may just feel a certain sense of calm and steady and alertness, and maybe being able to tune into our own soul, to our own spirit. I know that sounds a little ethereal, but it does feel like this point of quiet and calm that we may be feeling.
Well, we are talking about Neptune, so if anything is going to take on those qualities, I'm going to say it might be Neptune, and that's okay. And I came across something that I found very interesting. You might find it interesting as well, Shawna, is likening stations to basically. So basically, when we have a station, we are, whether it's direct or retrograde, but especially the fact that we're going direct, we're going forward in movement. The planet is going beyond what it's been at. It's essentially moving forward, even though it's a really slow moving planet. So the stations can add like further clues to certain dramas that are unfolding in our life around Neptunian ideas, or like we were talking about spirituality, compassion, the arts, imagination. But this also has to do with illusion and delusion and ideal pictures in our lives. And sometimes maybe we need to go for that ideal picture, or maybe we realize that ideal picture is not going to work. So I would say anybody out there, especially for all of us, we're all going to have some type of Neptune drama. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be drama for your mama. It could just be, like some type of thing that unfolds. But especially if any of you are out there that have personal planets that might currently be having Neptune transits, or like angles, like your ascendant or descendant or midheaven or whatever. So if you have a planet at, I'd say like about 9 degrees to about 13 degrees in a mutable sign, like Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, chances are this station is going to mean a lot to you. Something is going to switch, essentially, or at least I think so. So Shawna, what do you think about all that and the potential for, new drama to unfold?
Yeah. So I think, I think that's interesting because, I happen to have Neptune transiting Neptune, it'll be stationing an aspect to my angles. So it's an aspect to my midheaven right now. So the career point. And what I've noticed is whenever something has aspected Neptune, like we had Venus opposite Neptune a while ago, and I had a lot of clients come to me that had Neptune to a personal planet, like to their sun or to their moon or something like that. And so what I noticed with these people that I talked to was that the theme was around feeling unclear about whatever the subject matter was in their life, whether that was work or sometimes relationship, like what to pursue. There was a certain level of ambiguity. And so, and I'm personally experiencing that as well, where I'm not really sure, I feel like there's something else or there's something more. And I kind of feel like I know what it is, but I'm not sure what the next practical things are. It feels very mysterious. these are all Neptunian things, ambiguity and like having a feeling or an intuition, but not knowing the practicality of it. And so I think that for all of us, but especially people who, like you're saying, Mel, are having a Neptune transit, so that 9 to maybe 12 degrees in immutable signs, Pisces, Sag, Virgo, or Gemini, there may be this feeling of like amplified ambiguity, or being like, wow, like I have no idea what the fuck I should do now. Maybe like something breaks open and you're like, whoa, like what do I do? And maybe something opens up, but I think maybe it takes a bit of time for things to fall into place. And so I say that not to freak anyone out. I say that because it's okay to not know during this point in time. I think Neptune asks us to chill out a little bit and to like follow the breadcrumbs and to know that it's okay to not know. And sometimes in that not knowing is how we actually figure things out.
Mm. Yeah. And chances are there's probably going to be some type of added knowing once we get to that sun square that you were talking about earlier on in the episode, which of course is not here yet, but we'll follow it. We'll follow
not
it
here
up.
Yet.
Not here yet. Not here yet.
I think you're right. That's a good point.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get a little, more info around those kind of nebulous areas once the sun kind of challenges us in those areas. And, of course, we always want to put a high side out there because who knows, this could be very, that's the thing is like sometimes Neptune, because it's not concrete at all, could have things kind of formulate like much like I just imagine this like the sky with some clouds and like the seven of cups where all these things are kind of coming out of the clouds just spontaneously appears, it's like magic, making magic, like as if out of nowhere this thing pops up. And so I'm wondering if on the high side, if we were to pair it with such things as, Mercury trine Uranus that we just talked about in those big picture visions, like maybe part of it is, now that it's stationed and about to move direct, about putting our dreams forward into action somehow, or unfolding the next piece of the puzzle in regards to that journey. Like you said, it might not be that, like we might be clearing through some fog in some respect, especially since we have the 4 of Swords this week. But I really like what you said about kind of going with the flow and it's okay to maybe take that action, but like just move with the current, like take each breadcrumb as it comes, and then basically, hopefully you'll find yourself to where you need to be by picking up each one of those crumbs. So yeah, like I want to see that.
Me too. Sounds great.
I want to see that. Well, let's talk about this first quarter moon, because I think, obviously we have that's going to be a tense thing. Whenever we have a first quarter, it's basically, we are being sparked into action in some way. Maybe something is conflicting within us or outside of us, and we have to take action on that. So Shawna, what do you think about just first quarter in general, and how maybe Pisces bent on that will, flavor that first quarter?
Yeah. So first quarter, you're right, Mel. It's this time of being confronted with something. It's this time, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's kind of like, okay, here's a situation where we may need to make a decision to move forward or to redirect or something. But like there's something that we need to do because it's first quarter, it's the beginning of the cycle. It's kind of like a decision point in the creation process. So, when J.K. Rowling sat down to write like the next chapter, what did she write about? She had to decide to sit down. She had to decide between the characters and that kind of thing. And so that decision, it lays out the rest of the path. And so I think that's the nature of the first quarter moon. The fact that it's in Pisces is kind of, it's like, oh my gosh, all of these things that we've been talking about with Neptune, there's a very similar vibe. And so being that it's in the sign of Pisces, I wonder if maybe we're deciding what to do with our intuitive energy, how to act on our intuitions, how to act on the gut level feelings that we have, and maybe like how to take care of ourselves too, like how to nourish our sensitivity, how to create healthy boundaries.
Yes, because Pisces isn't always the best at that. And it's interesting too, because now we have the sun in Sag, who is not necessarily great at that either. We've always, and maybe that's the thing though, Shawna, is like, yeah, we need certain boundaries in our lives. That's totally true. It needs to happen. That's why we still got Jupiter and Scorpio who's making that happen. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of this week is kind of pushing us to, like, it's time to grow. It's time to like honor these, these big picture things and these ideals, and look at them and act on them the best way possible. Because what I find very interesting and rather beautiful, Shawna, is I've been adding a lot of fixed stars into my work lately. And it turns out that our first quarter moon is exactly on a royal fixed star. I know. So do tell.
That sounds fabulous. Yeah, do tell. What is that?
And so what that means is a fixed star is they're like our suns essentially. They're so out there, so far away from us that they move slowly. Like it takes for a fixed star to move a degree, it takes basically, like 80 to 100 years or something like that. So this star is called Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut. That's the best way I can say it. Fomalhaut. And that fixed star has to do with who moved into 4 degrees Pisces in 2009. It had been in 3 degrees for since the beginning of the 20th century, I think. But it's related to ideals and dreams. It's the star of it's inspirational leader or the spiritual leader, or like connecting with the spiritual in life and the mystical. And once again, I feel like that is another tie-in to following the dreams. So first quarter is bringing tension, especially emotional tension around, our dreams and also our ideals. So if we have something, a dream that really needs attending to, I think that this is added boost to take action around that. But at the same time, if there are ideals that need to be attended to that are no longer working, that has to be paid attention to as well. So what do you think about that, Shawna, and our added bit of, back to, the spiritual and inspirational?
Yeah, I think that is quite appropriate and beautiful. What a lovely little extra bit of emphasis around following these intuitive callings. And this, I feel like so much of what we're talking about this week, Mel, is around following that creative process and honoring our dreams as things that are important, and to not take those things lightly. And so, yeah, it's like, where can we listen? And then where do we need to be the opposite of Pisces? Where do we need to be more discerning so that we can put these dreams and these higher visions into reality?
I think that's a key point, because it's very true. You want to look at that opposition, even if it's not in play. We don't have a planet hanging out in Virgo right now. But the reality is you can act within that polarity by calling upon those two energies. In order to make those dreams happen, it's true. You have to discern things. You got to put those boundaries on it, And I find it very interesting, Shawna, that we have, once again, let's talk about Jupiter, who's hanging out in Scorpio. So Jupiter is basically trining Neptune in Pisces as it stations direct. And it's still trining, Neptune when we have our first quarter square, because the moon will be in, it's in orb to Neptune, I would say, in conjunction. So once again, we have that Jupiter, Jupiter is like, okay, where can we change? Where can we unearth these things? Or like you were saying last week with your quote and my dream, unearthing those gems that lie beneath.
Yes.
So where are those unearthing?
Let's get the shovel.
That's good. Yes. Dig those up. So we want to see those things. And I feel like this is really brewing a lot of energy in the fact that we actually have Mars, who's going to be our last chain in command, essentially, that's going to hit this Uranus opposition. What is it? Maybe like next week or the week after that, but it's in orb. So I feel there's going to be some actions in the next couple of weeks that are really we're going to be taking risks, or we're going to be like stepping outside the box, or trying new things in our life. And this is probably premature to talk about this, but this is within a couple of degrees, so it's very much prevalent this week. So what do you think about that, Shawna, and how not to add too much, because of course we're going to talk about this aspect probably next week, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's good, because it is the Mars Uranus. It's something it's the potential is building. So I feel like this week we're feeling all of the things, and the imagination is coming up so that things can be fleshed out and then acted upon in the weeks to come. And so the feeling that I get, the image that I get as you were talking about that, is like an archer that pulls the arrow back on the bow. And so I feel like right now we're pulling the arrow back, and that's all of this big imagination and big vision stuff. And then a few weeks from now, when Mars and Uranus are opposite, then that's when the arrow will be released. And it'll be like a spontaneous release where maybe you're like, oh my gosh, like I let go of it, sooner than I thought. And it's really exciting.
I know. That's what I was that's what I was thinking, Shawna, because I don't know if any of you have tried to shoot a bow before, or an archery thing. I have, and that is difficult. And that's the truth is the tension is going to start to get you. that bow is going to be pulled back, and that tension is just going to be increasing, and chances are you're going to let go and aim and fire because you can't take the tension anymore. And I think that really has a lot to do.
Interesting.
I love the way you set it up. It was perfect. And yeah, so I have a feeling that might be kind of a manifestation around that, especially since we're talking about Mars, who's still in Libra, which Libra, once again, has to do with choices and choosing certain things in life and getting out of any type of indecision. And so because it's the last planet down the chain, we've had Mercury, then we had Venus, right? And then we have the sun, or maybe the other way around. I can't remember. Now we'll have Mars. And so, yeah. So yes, we're definitely pulling that bow back, I think, in a lot of ways. So, perfect analogy. Okay, so let's talk about some of these tarot cards, because we gotta add these in. So we have another interesting pair. I swear, this week I was just like, what? Daughter of Swords, or the Page of Swords as the focus, and the Five of Swords as the grounding. And maybe that could play into some of that Mars and Libra energy, because swords is that air quality. But ultimately, there's a couple different manifestations with this, as all cards are. But I'm going to start with possibly the not as exciting one, which is,
that out of the way.
Let's get that out of the way, to where, we may be challenged in some form of honesty around our self-destructive tendencies or defeatist tendencies, because that's the thing with Pisces, is that it can be very destructive in a way where, whether it's through like substance abuse, or not looking at something clearly, or just not willing to take action. Because like sometimes being a Pisces South Node like I am, sometimes my motto is I don't wanna. I don't wanna. And so, you can find yourself, if you find yourself in there, we might be getting on insight into certain ways of acting that we might need to release from our life. Because the Five of Swords is all about it is about self-destruction. It's about defeat. It's about conflict with another, especially ideologically, which could definitely come out with all these Sagittarius planets. So yeah, I think we might get a little insight into some of the things that have been holding us back and some of the potential changes we might need to make, and new ideas that we'll need to basically grasp on in order to get past this kind of no-win situation. So that was a little kind of vague, but Shawna, what do you think about these two cards or just that concept?
Yeah, these are tricky cards. I get a feeling of naivety from these cards. And it makes me want to make sure that, like, to watch out for ways in which we see things the way that we want to see them versus what they actually are. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that is very much like you're saying, Mel, where you're like, I don't want to see it that way because it's not what I want. And so I'm going to pretend like it's all okay. I'm just going to, stick my head in the sand. And so I wonder if that's a possibility. I think that's definitely something that can happen when we have Neptune and Pisces. Because Pisces, it helps us see through to like the spiritual, to the soul of something. And so that's amazing and very important. But at the same time, sometimes, like you're saying, if we only focus on that, we can be destructive in the material realm. And so, yes. I think it's important to watch out for ways in which we may be naive or looking at things from like a Pollyanna kind of way. And so how can we retain this sense of innocence and curiosity, but also take care of ourselves and make sure that we're not being put in a position to be taken advantage of, either, again, by others or by ourselves as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because it's true, that's the thing is a lot of times what our self-defeating tendencies might represent in each and every one of us, and every one of us has got them. No one is free of that. That's the thing is like when you put in this like Pisces energy, the Neptunian, the kind of foggy, like a lot of times we don't see it. We don't even realize it's our downfall. We just continue on. And that's the thing is like, we're like tricked by this and not realizing it's our downfall. But we can't even see what it is we can't see. So it's like this weird like cycle. But I think because we have so much Mercury action this week, and there's really, those challenges from Sagittarius to cut through. I feel like this is, regardless of, what it really means and the fact that we have self-defeating, tendencies, ultimately we're kind of gaining new awareness around that. We've got new ideas on that, how to maybe fix that, or new ways to use our power to get us out of this caught realm where we're not going to see anything from it. And it's basically a purposeless challenge. In a sense. And we have that first quarter square of the moon, which is a challenge. So we might be thinking differently around maybe a situation we're already in, and we realize that this isn't going to pan out, because we are in the early degrees of Pisces. Or, it could even be something as simple as, we're talking earlier about, really embracing your dreams and your ideals and going for them. Maybe this is the first key of insight into your own power to change some of the things that you've been, that have been causing defeat in your life, and like really taking ownership of them and beginning to change your mind as best as possible, to really, go after these things, because that's the thing is like maybe our ideal is just fine. But it's all our other actions that are surrounding it that really are the ones holding us back and holding us down. And it could involve around other people, because a lot of times that Five of Swords is conflict with others. So there's different ways to take this, but ultimately we're looking at self-defeating tendencies in a different way, and how we can maybe look at new ways to kind of and new ideas around that to help relieve that and move on from those situations.
Yeah, I love that, Mel. What I really hear you talking about is moving from like a sort of victim mentality, a powerless mentality, to like, oh, I can actually do something about this situation. And we may be making that shift this week.
Yes. And chances are too, like I just said, conflict, there is a chance they say you have an idea because just wrap this up really quick because sometimes the Daughter of Swords has got a bright idea. It's like the beginning of something. It's like, oh my God, this is great. And a lot of times it's time to go for it. It's time to give some birth to that. Take your power and like move it beyond that. And sometimes when we have ideas and we're starting new things in our lives, sometimes we're even faced with conflict from outside of ourselves to be able to pursue that. And so if you have this idea and you really want to go for it, but outside of you, you're like arguing with other people, or ideologically they're like, that's not going to work, or blah, blah, blah. Be aware of that too. Cause maybe, give it a chance and don't let others kind of corner you into the idea of defeat. Is what I'm trying to say here. So
that's a good point. I like that.
Okay. So, all right. So some questions. Let's wrap this up here. So some questions I would take away with Neptune stationing direct in that first quarter moon in Pisces. I would say, as Neptune stations direct, what clues are unfolding in my personal drama? Is there a spiritual aspect of myself that needs integration? Is it time to go forward with a particular dream? I would ask, how honest am I being with myself in regards to certain self-destructive tendencies? Is there new insight that is suggesting I release something from my life? And then lastly, I would ask, if challenged by my own creative idealism, can I still take action to lead myself through any uncertainty into greater expression? Will I allow myself to make magic?
Make magic.
Let's make that magic. J.K. Rowling would want you to. She would be honored. So that being said, Shawna, what have we learned? Oh my gosh, so much stuff. It's all the Neptune stuff I don't remember. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we learned that we have Venus, who's in Scorpio, who will be in sextile to Pluto and Capricorn, which is a working connection. And speaking of connections, it helps create meaningful connections. So how can we really dive in and connect with people in a deep way this week? We learned that the sun has now moved into Sagittarius, where we're expanding our big picture vision. And then Mercury in Sag is going to trine Uranus in Aries. And so that fire is kicked up. And we are going to be looking at new ways to incorporate freedom and innovative thinking in our lives. And then lastly, we have Neptune stationing direct in that first quarter moon in Pisces. And we're tapping into how we can make our own magic based on what our ideals are, but also honoring any type of defeatist inclinations or let's stay clear and focused the best we can, but also honor our spiritual intuition. I think we'll be good this week, right, Shawna?
Yeah.
So that being said, I know you have an excellent action item for our listeners, so please share.
Yeah, so this will be a fun one. So I want you to get a piece of paper and write a story about yourself. So this can be it can be fiction or it could be nonfiction, and it doesn't it doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. I just want you to use one page and just write, if someone were to write a story about you, what would they write? And when you do this, I want you to do it and then put it away and then look at it maybe later in the week and really notice, what is your character like? What is your character encounter? What are the challenges? What are your character's strengths and weaknesses? And this is something where you could really analyze yourself if you wanted to, or it can just be for fun. I think the biggest thing this week with this action item is I want to get us thinking about ourselves as a hero or heroine in our journey, and that we can sometimes just make shit up too. Like it doesn't have to follow this linear path that that sometimes we can imagine things, and sometimes we can put ourselves into different roles as well. So something to have fun with.
I love it. It's so perfect for all this Neptune and Pisces action.
Yep.
And because we don't have too much crazy Saturn going on. So yeah, get in there, dive in. And if you'd love to share your story with us, we'd love to hear it. So comment and tag, let us know. And we'd love to see that.
Yeah. And so another way to get involved, of course, is to become a patron of the podcast to show your appreciation and get those really cool show notes. So you can do that through social media. You can find out more on Facebook or Instagram under Feminine Principle Podcast, or you can go to feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com.
Yes, because we'd love to have you and join our burgeoning community.
Yes.
So yes. And so you can find us where Shawna just said, and you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Feminine Principle Podcast if you want to reach out. And then to find us individually, you can find me at energeticprinciples.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Energetic Principles. So Shawna, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under Neo Feminine Astrology.
Yes, and she's always got fun things going down the work. She's a little more active than I am on there, but it's great. There's always new content to look at, and we'd love for you to stop on by and say hi. And also, just a quick reminder for everyone that we do have that Facebook Live event coming down in the works here. So we have once again, that's going to be December 1st, right, Shawna? So
Yep.
December 1st at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 8:30 p.m. Universal time, and Saturday the 2nd at 6:30 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. So mark your calendars and join us. We'd love to have you. And if you have any topics of consideration, send them on over. So yeah, Shawna, any last words for our listeners?
Yeah, sending lots of love and asking that if you enjoy this podcast, definitely leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. That helps us a lot to get pulled up earlier in the search, and it helps more people find us. And then, of course, make sure that you subscribe so that you get future episodes the moment that they are uploaded.
Yes, and they come out at midnight on Sundays, Pacific time. So yeah, subscribe. It'll automatically download. It's as easy as that. And thank you for everyone who has left 5-star ratings on iTunes, because I've seen the number growing, and I'm very appreciative, and I'm sure Shawna is too. And if you want to throw another 5-star out there, you can do it on Facebook too. So let's get the people to us, and we'll go from there. So, all right, everybody, I as well wish you a wonderful week and sending lots of love. And we thank you so much for tuning in. So until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.